Hi, I'm James, and I haven't posted in a couple of years as I stopped running Brew Computing as a day-to-day business and basically took up another job where I didn't really want a conflict of interest, but I've had something come up which I'm going to be doing in my free time a bit and which doesn't conflict with the other work that I'm doing. So I thought it would be interesting to let you guys all have a look at some of it. So these are all from an auction of Jaguar Land Rover equipment. This was being held locally and I was notified by some friends who knew of it to take a look. And when I did, I found quite a few interesting systems, so I thought why not buy some. So in here I've bought a total, so I spent, after VAT and fees, we have bought, spent £2,157.60. And in here we have 10 gaming systems which are listed as a Z170 platform with i7s, and they also note 32 gigs of RAM and GTX 1080s. But after that the descriptions get a bit more vague, so we have some Samsung 700T laptops, Mac Minis, HTC Vives, which I believe, because there was the same number of Vives, I didn't buy all of them. But there were the same number of those as there were the sort of gaming systems, so thinking they were linked and possibly reused for events. And then we also have some DVI splitters, which I bought because I used to use those quite a lot. And then also some additional gaming PCs where there was no description of the hardware, but from the photo there was one with the side panel off and I could see they were X79 boards. They have windowed side panels so you could see inside. And then also an HP workstation and a fractal design case. So I'm going to take a look at what I've bought and we'll see if this has been £2,000 which I'm going to be able to make a profit on, or if I've bought a load of old rubbish. So let's take a look. So our first item, and I'm just going to show on the screen here the actual listings as I bought them. So we can see here we have various Mac Minis, 6 of, and these were bought after fees for a total of £125.28. All I had was this picture showing the top 2 machines and a couple more underneath. So let's take a look and see what we have. Okay, so opening up the box, and inside we have our 6 Mac Minis. So these are all fairly old by the looks of it. So we have optical drive, and so we can see this has been to the Geneva Auto Show. I will have to blur out that address. And these all look to be the same. This one is noted as having Windows 7. The other noted 10.8.2 as the OS X version. Another system here. The label here mentions Evoke, so whether this was used for some signage. And another here. This one is stuck to the bottom of the box as it seems to have some tape and bits on the back of it, so again suspect this might have been mounted somewhere on a booth for soft signage. And also has a note of it must have previously had an RFID reader in the back of it. No power cables or anything with these, but I can certainly find one of those. And final unit, nothing interesting on there. Oh, Gen 3 wall kit 1. So yeah, this suggests maybe it was used for an LCD wall or something similar. So looking at the first of the Mac Minis, and fortunately this booted up without any kind of password on it. And we can see it's actually running macOS 10.7.4. It's a Core 2 Duo, so pretty old. I think this is 2010, with 2 GB of RAM, so these are going to be pretty base models. And we can see, so there's UPDD console auto starts. This looks to be for some desktop handling for a touchscreen ELO 2700 monitor, which presumably is what this was being used with. And we also have a video on the desktop, which so VLC seems possibly it's trying to run on a second monitor or something. but if we set it to full screen, and I've muted out the audio here, but we have a promotional video set to loop showing the Range Rover, so I'm pretty confident this was used at events and would have been just for maybe showing videos or similar on a booth. Same sort of thing that I used to do in a previous life. Our second system is a bit less promising. Looks like we've got a failed hard drive in this one. Mac Mini number 3, so we have the same spec, actually running an even older version of Mac OS X, 10.6.7, and this looks to be loading, so it says evoke widget wall. This is saying it wants to initialize a download of 400 megabytes, please be patient, and then if after initialize, so allow 5 minutes for it to start. So I might leave that to see if it's going to start up. We also have a video file on this one, and so this says video loop for widget wall, and this looks to be maybe a demonstration of how to use the widget wall. So this may be some kind of sort of seeing how the evoke would look in different environments. So I might just leave this to see if the software will load, since it says wait 5 minutes. But interesting on here if it's got some unique or unavailable software on it. And leaving it to load, we do eventually get something. It looks like this was probably used on displays in a motor show. We've got French or Netherlands for language. There are various different bits. It's a little funny with the mouse sometimes. It looks like though a lot of the content here is missing, so we haven't had this downloaded because it couldn't grab an internet connection. Obviously being Snow Leopard, I'm not going to connect this to the internet, and I would strongly suspect that none of this content exists anymore. So a shame. This could have been interesting. It is in its own way, but just not as interesting as it could have been if the content itself was loaded onto the device. Mac Mini number 4, again we have Snow Leopard, same spec and the same evoke application on here. I may look at this separately to see if it works, but my suspicion is it's going to have the same lack of content as the first one. Our fifth one, as promised, actually has Windows 7 on it, as per the label. However, we have passwords on the user accounts. And finally, so this one, as per the sticker on it, is running OS X 10.8.2. It's another Core 2 Duo, 2 gigs of RAM. Interestingly, this one loads up MAMP, Manage Your Website Locally web server, running Apache and MySQL. It doesn't seem to actually have anything on it though, it just gives us the default loading page. The last date modified on this was 2013 in January, but doesn't look to be anything else on here. So with these machines, most if not all of them need the PRAM battery replaced, which isn't too bad a job. One needs a new SSD or hard drive, but I'll probably push an SSD into it. With these, I don't know whether it's really going to be worth spending the money on putting SSDs into them, but I do have some sewed in, so I may upgrade them to 4 gigabytes of RAM if those are compatible. These came in at £20.88p per machine, and to be honest, I'm just going to sell these on, give them a clean up, install them with the latest version of OS X they'll take, and resell them. So I don't think these were a great bargain, particularly with the time that will be involved in doing them, but I shouldn't lose money on them. Now I'd say next we have my first real error here. So we have a box of 5 Samsung 700T kind of laptop tablet things, and so while the devices themselves look fine, they don't come with chargers, and I don't have a 12 volt charger suitable for these, so off to eBay to buy one to try them out, and I'll go from there later on. The total for these did only work out at £13.92 per system though. So even having to spend £10 a unit on the chargers, I should be able to get that back fairly easily. But again, not the most worthwhile buy. One which I am a bit happier about though is we have a box of 6 of these Geffen splitters. So these are dual link DVI, so work with sort of older screens that do up to 2560 by 1600. And I bought these because at £7 each for a box of 6 of them, that actually works out pretty well. They're all boxed, so they take in a single dual link DVI or single link, and output it's 2. I used to use these a lot when I did a lot of video capture work, as they let you obviously capture on one screen and output to a second, or sorry, capture on this output while displaying it to a screen as well. Not something that you so commonly need now, but there are still applications where people will use this. And again, for £7 each, these should easily make their money back over time. There are also 4 of these HTC Vive sets. So these are the first gen Vive headsets. Looks like we have some stickering on there which we'll probably take off. But these look to be full kits. So we have lighthouses, we have controllers, power cables and so on. So at an average price of £52.20 for these, after fees and VAT and everything else. It may be a case of I part these out, as particularly the lighthouses seem to be quite popular items, or sell them as complete kits. I do have one friend who's already said they want a full kit, and then I'll sell on the rest. And now next, so I have these, can't even fit them in frame in this room, 10 systems. So all of these are listed up as Asus Z170 systems. It does note they have a Core i7-6700, 32 gigs of RAM, water cooling, no hard drive according to the description, and a GeForce GTX 1080. Some of these are boxed, some of them are not, and from a quick glance there does seem to be some minor differences between a couple of them. I haven't looked at any of the boxed ones yet, so I'm going to get everything out and look at each of them in turn, check what works, what doesn't, and see what we have. And just show what I was buying on. So this is same listings for all of the lots, but in this case we have a picture of the box, the system itself plugged in, and booting to the BIOS screen. As for description, we can see here, so it notes we have Asus Z170 Gaming Pro, or Pro Gaming ATX Tower, Core i7-6700, 32 gigabytes of memory, liquid cooling, GTX 1080 Super Jet Stream 8GB AI, and hard drive removed. So like I say, let's take a look at these and see what we have in each of them. I will say I paid an average price of about £125 for these after all fees and VAT. Some of these went for a lot more. Weirdly, a few units went for £225 plus VAT and fees. I basically stopped bidding. Most of these I got £80 or £90 plus fees. One of them went to 110. By the time you add hammer fees and VAT onto them, obviously the price goes up to get me to that average. And so getting system number 1 out here, and already we can see there is something interesting here, as we have an additional card that's not expected. So above we have our GeForce, but we also have here a NIC. And reading in closely, I can see 10G on there. So this has a dual 10 gigabit NIC in it, by the looks of it anyway, which is a really nice, interesting addition, because I wasn't expecting that. Any extra pieces that aren't necessary in like your general gaming machine, because this has got integrated, gigabit Ethernet anyway, that's not really necessary in a gaming machine for most people, so I'll be stripping that out and making other use of it. It is also worth noting that these do have sort of dual link DVI on the graphics card, so my suspicion is that when these were being used, they were being used with those Geffen splitters. So on events you could have a screen for the player and then a separate screen being driven above it. That was fairly typical when I used to do events for another company. Often you wanted people to be able to see what was being played separately from the main screen that the player was using. And now taking a look inside the system, so what I'm expecting to find in pretty much all of these is we have a pallet GTX 1080 GeForce, we have our Corsair water cooler, and then we have 32 gigs of memory, so 2 DIMMs here. The power supply is a Corsair RM 850X, so while it will be obviously a few years old now, quite a nice power supply in there, all things considered. And then just looking at that network controller, okay. And so what we have here written on the label, so we have an Intel X540 T2 Ethernet adapter. That looks to be PCI Express 8X on there. So we actually have dual 10 gigabit Ethernet. That's passively cooled. And that's actually quite a nice find because I have a 10 gigabit switch but currently only use it at 2.5. So if I have some more of these cards, I might take a couple myself to make use of them. Another thing I've noticed is, although these actually were advertised as hard drive removed, this actually has an M2 drive, so there's a SSD on the board. So whether the person who was listing these thought there was no hard drive in them and wasn't aware of M2 SSDs, I'm not sure. But that looks to be a 256 gigabyte drive. And hopefully that is the same across all of them, because if it is, that's a really good bonus because it means I don't have to buy any. So having switched it on at the wall, we now have lights inside, which is a positive sign, so let's see if they work. Obviously advertised as working, so there's hopefully no reason it shouldn't. Diagnostic LEDs are cycling through inside it. And brilliant, first one is up and running. And so it looks like it's reporting overclock failed. But that's not always uncommon on these ASUS boards if they've been rebooted or anything. So as it's reporting, so time and date are great, so it's got some BIOS battery life in it. It's set up to use the XMP profile on the memory. Sorry, I thought this was 3000 in these ones, but no, this one's 2133. And yeah, we have our Core i7-6700 processor, 32 gigs of RAM. So let's take it out the BIOS and see what's what. So booting it up, it actually then boots into the OS. And we can see, so we've got Windows 10 Pro on here. It does have a certificate of authenticity on the machine as well, so that should all be activated and legitimate. Confirms our spec and memory. I have removed that Ethernet card from it. It did also try to connect to TeamViewer server, which I obviously wouldn't want to let it do. And interestingly, we have, so it looks like this was used for some gaming. So we have Epic Game Launcher on it, which is not loading by default. Also have Origin, Apex Legends installed, and various other bits of software. Interestingly, we do also have Visual Studio and Unity engine on here. I have to admit I've never used Unity. I've only ever really looked at Unreal Engine personally. And we've got a project on here which was looked at last 5 years ago. And then loading into Unity, so it pops up some bits about VR, which makes a lot of sense. These are labelled as VR machines. And And then are we able to play this scene? So we have something working here, but I'll be honest, I'm not sure what this is. A person standing in some rain. So maybe this is, you know, something that was being worked on, or interestingly, these people are one-sided. So they're obviously only designed to be viewed from one angle, so whether this was a scene you're supposed to view or watch, I'm not sure, or be stood... Of course, being VR, I wonder if you're supposed to effectively stand in the middle of this, and there was no mechanics for moving. But yes, it looks like you effectively were supposed to be amongst these, and maybe you have some actors around you. So I might have a play with that a bit more if I get the opportunity, but interesting to see on here. Now onto our second of the gaming desktops, and again we've got our GeForce up top, we've got a 10 gigabit Ethernet controller here, and also interestingly we've got a couple bonus HDMI ports here. So I'm going to take a look, because I think this is some kind of capture card in this system. And yeah, so indeed it is. So what we have here is actually written on the back of it. So we have a Blackmagic Intensity Pro 4K capture card. So we have HDMI in and out on it, which will capture up to 4K at 30 Hz or 60 Hz at 1080p. And we also have a connector for a breakout cable, which unfortunately isn't included with it. So I could possibly source one of those separately for doing S-video and other things. I will possibly keep this for the S-video, as I currently have an Elgato 4K capture card. So for actual capture it's better than this, but it doesn't have those additional options. So interesting find. Probably worth about sort of £50 to £80 if I were to sell this separately. Now booting this one up, so we've got a dead CMOS battery in it, but that's not the end of the world. That can easily be replaced on these boards. And interestingly, when it comes up, it tries to use Tortoise SVN to sync to this folder. So taking a look, so this seems to have a batch file and testdir, but it's empty. And our batch file just pauses, so it doesn't seem to do anything, which we can see there. So it doesn't seem to, obviously we're again not going to try and connect to some SVN from 8 years ago. But also on the desktop there is, quite interestingly here, startmeup.bat. So this runs, so what we have on here is, so Windows no editor, so that would suggest it's an Unreal Engine project. And then it says, so Formula E German update, so 2019, so about 5 years ago. And yeah, so we've got an Unreal Engine logo here, JLR Formula E, and running that. So it's looking for a headset, so it may be a case of getting one of the Vives out and testing that with this. And does the application itself do anything, or is it looking for that headset or other devices? So yeah, so we have Panasonic Jaguar Racing Formula E team. Unfortunately we don't seem to get anything from it, so I'm guessing this is designed to be run with a headset. So what I'll probably do is make a note of that and see if I can get that running with one of the Vive headsets later. So while not too much yet, interesting. Now desktop number 3 I've skipped over, so we had another 10 gigabit Ethernet card, a dead CMOS battery and a blank SSD. So working, needs a fresh Windows install, but otherwise nothing too special. However, here we again have something a bit interesting. So the fourth one, we have no 10 gigabit Ethernet, but we do have this 4 HDMI card. So again, I'm going to pull this out and take a look at what this is. Okay, so having pulled that out, and what we have here, so we have a Magewell Pro Capture. So this has your 4 HDMI inputs on it, and these 4 separate processing chips, along with active cooling. It's PCI Express 2.0 by 4 card, and basically this can take 4 1080p HDMI streams in on a single card. This is really interesting because I wasn't expecting to see anything like this in these systems, and from a quick eBay it looks like these could be worth anywhere around £400. So I'm really hoping I go through and find some more of these, because obviously these systems, £125 each, and I still have a complete system. So if I can find some more cards like this, that would be fantastic. Quite possible it's the only one, but maybe we'll be lucky. So booting this one to OS, again we've got Formula E, which is this VR version which doesn't seem to run without the headset. But we also have an old desktop folder, and in here we have a JLR app, which is a Unity project. This seems to be something different, as we've got a Land Rover Defender in here. So if we hit play, again, let's see if we get anything without the headset. Not too sure on there, maybe again something we need to have the headset connected to do something with. But interesting that we have something different here. Now for our next machine we've got something interesting marked on the top. So this says PT Automotive iLab 5.0 and notes that there was a 1 terabyte drive fitted in 2019. I've looked inside, and again, despite the fact that these said hard drive removed in the adverts, it does indeed have that 1 terabyte hard drive as a 2.5 inch drive mounted around the back of the main board. Now on this system we have some different things. So again we seem to have some Unreal Engine projects, and while I couldn't get these to launch, looking in the content folder here there is a video which seems to show, so we have like a vertical stereoscopic video file here. So this looks to be like a demonstration or recording of the project they have here, and we can see it's got sort of Land Rover Defender and a helicopter and the Arctic base, and sort of goes through the environment on there. But then we also have the D drive. And on here we have various other bits of content. So there are a number of Unreal projects on here and Unreal renders. The projects, a lot of them just complain they're missing other content like plugins, and do I want to download them, which again I'm not going to connect these up to the internet, so can't view those. But the souvenir test one seems to be them testing different assets they've purchased. So had that Arctic base, but didn't seem to have any Land Rover or similar in it. There are also some other folders on here, so with things like renderings of the Land Rover Defender, all the different models of it and different packages, or option packs I should say. So it looks to me like this was obviously some kind of development system they were using for some of these VR experiences. So while I'm not going to go through everything that's on here, certainly some interesting things to take a quick look at. So having been through all the systems, the rest didn't really have too much different in them. There was the same Formula E software across most of them, but we did in total get 7 of these 10 gigabit E wireless cards out of them, and as for each of those is 2 ports, along with the 2 capture cards. So with one of the capture cards potentially being worth a few £100, the other one sort of £50 to £80, and probably £40 or so for those network cards, there is at least some money to be made out of those items, and then the machines as well should turn a profit, hopefully. I have also connected up one of the Rifts that I purchased and have set this up looking at the Formula E application that was on here. I'm not entirely clear how it worked. With a little experimentation I was able to get it into this, and it appears, so yeah, we go round the track. If I have one of the controllers to hand. So, not too clear on how this works. It may be that it needs a wheel attached to it, because I did see some Fanatec applications on there. So without that, not too much I can do, but cool to see that there is, you know, some... So one of the cars there has crashed and everything's slowed. The instructions on this were all in German, so I couldn't really follow what was happening too much. But it does look quite a cool demo, and I might be able to pull a copy of that off of these machines as well, just for posterity's sake if it isn't out there. So one of the possibly more questionable lots I bought is this HP Z420 system. To be honest, I was getting towards the end of the auction, and I guess maybe just got a little carried away on this one. So this has a Xeon E5 1650 V2, which is an Ivy Bridge generation chip, so quite old at this point. And this was £70. I suspect I probably will make my money back on it. It does have a hard drive in, but I need to connect it up as the SATA cable weirdly has been removed. But we can see on the screen the specs here. So we do have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and like I say, I will probably make my money back. It does have a GTX 970 in it, so not a particularly exciting graphics card, but at least something usable. So the machine has some value, but one that I should probably have left alone. One which I'm glad I didn't leave alone, however, is this. So this was listed up as a Fractal Design FD-CA Node 304BL, which for all intents and purposes meant it just looked like it was advertised up as a case. And when I'd originally gone through all the auction lots, I hadn't even picked up on this one, because I kind of looked and went, oh, it's just a case, and it wasn't in with the rest of the systems. It was sort of with accessories and pieces in a further lot. But what I did notice when I looked, because I literally saw this with a few seconds left to run, and when I went to the second picture I went, oh hold up, that's not a case, that's a PC. And the way BidSpotter works is, because I bid in the last few seconds, the auction's extended by 10 minutes. So if you bid in the last 10 minutes, the auction is extended. So I put in a bid of £40 plus fees and so on, and waited the 10 minutes and won the item. So in the end paid £55.68 for this, and really keen to take a look at it and see what it actually is. On the back of the board it looks similar to the Asus machines that I purchased, which indicates it's a Z170 board, and there's also an i7 sticker I can see on the back there. So really keen to see if it's a similar specification. And so with it up on the desk and thumb screws out, let's take a look inside and see what we have. And so, okay, so we can see written on the top here we have EVGA GeForce GTX 1070. I was kind of hoping it had a 1080 inside it, as the other machines were 1080s. And then looking inside, so I can see we have an Asus Pro Gaming Z170i, so the Z170 ITX board from Asus, a pair of DIMMs in here, and then a Corsair VS550, so a 550 watt power supply, and also we have an all-in-one, so similar Corsair cooler, and everything looks pretty neat and tidy in here as well, which is nice. It also looks like in there we've got a SSD, so let's fire it up and see what we have. And having booted it into the OS, so this one didn't have anything interesting on it. Unfortunately, it's just been wiped. But overall, that is an excellent little machine for the money, and should help, like I say, with some of the less worthwhile purchases in these lots. Now, the final 3 lots that I have out of all of that I've bought here are 3 what was just listed as gaming PCs, and in the description it purely said gaming PC. And for the 3 items, this came to £320.16, or about £106.72 per system. And there was fortunately a picture of it with the side panel off. So we can see from that we have a MSI X79 board. So this is the first of the LGA 2011 sockets, so Sandy Bridge or Ivy Bridge E, similar generation to that HP workstation I just looked at. We can also see we have 850 watt power supplies, not the nicest looking case, optical drives, and also it looks to have hard drive in there and potentially an SSD. So for these two, they were just under £70, which after all the fees and everything was okay. Possibly I spent a little more on those ones than I should. The third one, however, was the most expensive lot that I bought in the entire auction, which was at £81. And the reason for this was this one inexplicably had 2 graphics cards in it. So none of the other 2 would power on as they were presented, or will power on presumably, but won't post because there's no integrated graphics on them. But this one had 2 graphics cards stuffed into it, which God knows why, but that's the case. So initially I was thinking this looked like probably, because we've got a single power connector here and then a 6+8, I was thinking this looked like maybe a GTX, like a high-end GTX 1070, but actually that looks to be the same 1080 card as in the Asus gaming systems that I have there as well. So I was really keen to get this apart and see if I was going to get value for money out of it with those 2 graphics cards in it. And so getting the first of these machines up with the graphics cards, so this is what I'm going to focus on. I'm assuming the others are vaguely the same, or mostly the same spec, just with the lack of graphics cards in them. I've already removed the screws on these cards. I also checked, and there is indeed an OCZ 256GB SSD in there, along with a 1TB hard drive. And then we have 4 times 4 gigs of memory. So that will be 16 gigs in total, because these are quad channel boards with 8 DIMM slots. And then looking at the graphics cards, so this looks to be the same card as in the other systems. Because they didn't have internal shots, I didn't really know what cards they had. And so yeah, it's another Palette Game Rock card. And if we look on this label here, so we can see, yep, 1080, 8GB card, so that's really nice, because, and that is a better card than I was expecting in there. And then this second card as well, so if we can just release that, again, I've already unplugged it. And again, here we have another 1080. So again, that is the absolute best case on here. Now I'd almost say, because these machines, with the age of them, being X79 boards, I'd possibly see if this fits into that ITX system, sell these, at least one of these with 1070 in it, and for the third system I'm going to have to find something to go in it. But actually these are better than I was expecting. Like I say, the ones without graphics cards at £70, again, they should make their money back. But this one, you know, the two graphics cards alone should be worth more than the item was bought for. And then there is some value whether I break the machine down into parts and sell off pieces, or sell it as a working system. And so booting this one up, so working with both 1080s I tried, which is great news. And unfortunately it's only a i7 3820 in this, so a 4-core 8-thread chip. I was hoping it might be one of the later 4000 series, so Ivy Bridge E chips, although potentially fitting one of those wouldn't necessarily be very expensive these days, particularly some of the Xeons that work in these. When these were a current platform, I actually used to run with an 8-core Xeon, one of the Ivy Bridge E Xeon E5 chips in my personal machine. So what I will probably do is salvage one of the 1080s from this machine and see if I can get it into that ITX box, probably the smaller 2-slot card, and see if it will fit. So that has kind of made it worthwhile on these, at least. I did also come in and turn down the fan speed because it was rather loud as standard. So all in all, I'm hopeful I've done okay with this lot. I think I've definitely learned a few things. Particularly, there was a viewing day for all the auction lots, and I kind of made the assumption that I can see what I need to know in the pictures. I also hadn't accurately worked out the exact pricing, so I knew I had to pay VAT and hammer fee. I hadn't considered the VAT on the hammer fee. So I was thinking I was spending a little under what I was, and that did mean, along with maybe a little over enthusiasm because it was my first time going through one of these auctions, possibly for, say, the Mac Minis, I spent a little more than I should have. Also, on the flip side of that, if I'd inspected the systems, I'd have known that one of these with the graphics cards I really would have wanted to buy, and the other two I perhaps should have left for someone else. And on this one, I got really lucky just seeing it at the last second, so maybe to spend more time going through the actual listings, I'd sort of scanned through things and seen the big desktops and had kind of missed this because it wasn't listed with all the other systems, and I just skimmed through it and missed it. I also, with these gaming systems, I'm assuming like I got super lucky on finding this 4 HDMI capture and the 4K one as well. Whether other systems in there had those, and that's why they were going for higher prices, because again, if I had been aware of that, I may have bid on different systems because you were just bidding by lot number. I'd have probably marked down, hey, these ones are worth spending more on. As it was, I just took the ones that were going for the least money and got really lucky in getting those 7 gigabit Ethernet cards, 10 gigabit Ethernet cards, and those 2 capture cards. Potentially there were more of those and I missed them and could have done better from it. I also hope you've really enjoyed watching this video and found it interesting. If you have, let me know in the comments, and this may be something I do again in future if the opportunity comes up. And if you're interested in some of those Jaguar VR projects as well, again, let me know in the comments and like the video, and I'll probably keep a copy of some of those and see if I can bring them up and look at how they work and what they're used for. So once again, thank you for watching. I realise it's been a 2-year break since I posted anything, so thank you if you're still actively subscribed to the channel. And yeah, maybe I'll see you again in a future one.